I'm very pleased today to be speaking with Dr. Samantha Ege, musicologist, storyteller, pianist, and who is recording some really interesting things. Samantha, I just found out you have recorded Avril Coleridge Taylor's Piano Concerto, daughter of Samuel Coleridge Taylor. So glad to have that coming our way. And
Yeah, there's a lot to look forward to this year.
well, you've got a new disc, and that's why we're talking today, Maestra, with piano concertos by Julia Perry and Doreen Carwithen. Julia Perry is a composer I encountered, and I want to show my age here, many years ago on the CRI label, old LP label, with a disc which also featured music of Mary Howe, who's a Virginia-born composer. But the new disc on the Laurel label, your fifth CD so far, holds Julia Perry's Piano Concerto and the Piano Concerto by Doreen Carwithen, a composer we're quite familiar with. We play her music fairly often on the air, but haven't had a chance to play Julia Perry's. Now, you are an authority on a number of composers. One of those, Undine Smith Moore, who is from here in Virginia. And we have Adolphus Hailstork right across the street at Old Dominion University, and Florence Price, of course. The sudden explosion of the music of Florence Price over the last 10 years, I mean, what has caused this?
Well, there's a direct link to the recovery of all of these works that were previously thought to be lost by all of these Price scholars like the late Raylinda Brown.
The
And
ones
so
in
many
Chicago that they found in the old house.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So the earlier generation of Florence Price scholars knew that this music was out there, but it wasn't until a couple came across this property, they were looking to buy it, and they kept seeing these sheets of music that said Florence B. Price. They had no idea who she was, but they, went down that rabbit hole and found out that actually she was one of the greatest, composers, American composers that never really got her full recognition. So this really sort of completed the mystery of what happened to the rest of her music. And so this incredible revival that we're seeing definitely comes down to that moment.
I'm very pleased to see that. We play her now as regularly as we would play Copeland or Vaughan Williams. She's a real standard rep on the radio here, and I've had a chance to do some programs with my friend John Jetter, who's the conductor of the Fort Smith Symphony, and he's been promoting her music on compact disc as well, and as have you. You have recorded some of Florence Price's music. The Julia Perry Concerto, fascinating piece, very short, about 11 minutes or so, and it consists of that slow movement and then a fast movement. When I was listening to it, I had the impression of it being like a nocturne almost, that first movement, and then someone late at night drifting towards sleep, and then suddenly the fast movement, almost like a dream where you're running and there are flashes of things happening, a little Harlem here, a little Gershwin there, and all kinds of interesting things. What's your take on Julia Perry's concerto? How has it hit you, or what is all your feelings on it?
Well, I think as you identified, it's very concentrated. We're used to concertos as these huge, muscular musical events, and she really distills the genre into something that is, that first movement. I really like the nocturnal description because to me, it's also really delicate. I kind of see that it's very atmospheric almost, that there are these such delicate textures that she's playing with. And then, that second movement, or she calls them speeds. So you've got slow and fast really, kicks things into action.
It's fast.
It's fast. It's incredibly rhythmic. It's rhythmic as well in ways that are really varied as well. Some of the rhythms to me sound like she's drawing on, African influences. I think listeners will hear different things there, but it's such a different sound world, especially compared to music that I've recorded and performed before.
And the Doreen Carwithen, she is, of course, was the wife of William Alwyn, who wrote fascinating music. In fact, William Alwyn's Third Symphony, I swear John Williams borrowed it for Star Wars. But she wrote so much film music, and then, of course, concert music. We play the Suffolk Suite and the overture ODTAA, which stands for one damn thing after another. And her music is a little bit cinematic. I listened to her concerto, and it has that sort of neo-romantic sound. It's almost as though Vaughan Williams meets Korngold in a way. How did you find it when you discovered that Doreen Carwithen?
The first time I heard the piece, which was a few years ago, I knew that it was my destiny to play it. It was a very dramatic reaction, but the piece just gripped me to the point that I could hear so much of what I wanted to say in the music. I could just really hear a sense of story and narrative. And I think that goes back to what you were saying about her as a film composer. You know, she writes with that big picture storytelling in mind. And so I just felt such a connection to the piece that it was always really my dream from that moment that I would one day be able to make the piece my own. And so it's interesting because so much of this work I approach as a historian, but I'm not a historian or biographer of Doreen Carwithen. I'm simply a huge fan, and I really hope that that comes across in the recording.
We are eager to play that on the air. Now, you played the piano from a very early age, but I think your intent was to be a musicologist, but you have kind of morphed a little bit from musicologist to pianist, and yet you still stay in both worlds. And you've got a book out, Southside Impressions of Black Women in Chicago Between the Wars. And that's going to be a fun read to see what has gone on there. That was Florence Price's time, and some others as well. So you're an author, you're a pianist, and you are a musicologist. And that's got to be fun to keep the three things juggling.
It's fun. Initially, it was stressful because I didn't really know how to balance, these different spinning plates. Mm-hmm. And also, like you said, I identified really as a music historian and thought that was my path. And for me, the performance was just a way of, let me just share this music because I can play it. So let me just share it. And then to see that take on a life of its own was not something that I could have anticipated. But once I realized, okay, it's been a few years now and it's still going, it really inspired me to push for even bigger projects, hence these concerto extravaganzas coming your way this year. I felt just very empowered to really step into that identity as a pianist and not have it be in the shadow of my work as a music historian.
Well, we're glad you're doing that. Things like the Avril Coleridge-Taylor Piano Concerto, we love adding that to the repertoire. We take pride in playing as wide a range as possible of music, and we have had a lot of really interesting African-American music played in this area. When our local university orchestra, Old Dominion University, played one of the Florence Price symphonies, for example, I knew that she had arrived. I noticed that Julia Perry wrote a cantata called Chicago. She studied with Nadia Boulanger and was just a great composer. And I'd love to see that on the air. And of course, I would be interested in more music from Undine Smith Moore. We do a local program of Virginia music every Wednesday. And I look around trying to find more music from Undine Smith Moore. She's one of our state's greatest composers, obviously. And are you still discovering new things like that?
Yes, Undine Smith Moore continues to be on my radar. In my previous album, we recorded a piece that she wrote called Soweto, right, in response to apartheid. And that was an incredible experience because I'd never heard of it before. I hadn't heard the music, but she's just such a compelling voice that I knew the music would be great. And so I requested to see her handwritten scores, which are kept at Emory. That's where her archive is. And they sent me about 300 pages.
Wow.
Because she was like an artist, just writing sketches and annotating. And from that, I was able to figure out the three movements of the piece. And it's one of the most beautiful pieces that I've ever played. And then I was back at Emory over the summer last year, spending more time with Undine Smith Moore's music. There is so much more to come, and I'm really excited to be, keeping her in my repertoire and hopefully having more to show you in terms of her work.
Well, since you're across the pond over here, we certainly invite you to Virginia and hope that we'll have a chance to see you live in concert. Have you been in our state before?
I haven't, no, but if there is any invitation, I am absolutely there.
All right, we have a big arts festival, so I'm going to put the word in saying,
Oh,
oh,
please do.
please,
Thank you.
and bring you in. Olga Kern is the director of our chamber series, so we obviously have a lot of good piano music lined up in our series. But we are getting your recordings. We're going to be featuring Maestra, your newest disc, on our new releases program, and then we put it in our standard circulation, so your recordings will be played on and on, and we are so glad that you are exploring this type of thing. You're a storyteller. They call you a storyteller as well. Do you actually, as you do concerts and things, tell stories?
I do, because I think with the classical music experience in general, we kind of take for granted what our audience knows and what they don't know. And then, especially when you're someone like me playing repertoire that is unfamiliar, I don't think you can take anything for granted. And it's really exciting to bring audiences in. So you mentioned I have a book out called Southside
Right.
Impresarios: How Race Women Transformed Chicago's Classical Music Scene. And that's the story of how Florence Price became Florence Price. But as part of that project, I had a piece commissioned based on the stories of sisterhood in my book. And so the Cuban composer Camila Cortina Bello, who's a good friend, currently based in New York, wrote a piece in response to my book. And she's got a Florence Price theme based on a Florence Price composition and a Margaret Bonds theme as well. And so, as part of introducing this piece, I talk to the audience about the themes so that when they're listening, they can follow the journey. And I in some concerts, I actually play the voice of Margaret Bonds, who describes what it was like living with Florence Price. So it's not just about the music, but I want audiences to feel really immersed in the stories of these women, because that's how we connect, with people from different backgrounds. We learn to empathize and imagine ourselves in their shoes and in their world. And it just becomes a really beautiful experience for me as a musician and, for the audience feeling that classical music is for them.
Well, Dr. Samantha Ege, it's so nice to talk with you. Good to have your new disc in. We're probably going to be talking with you more as things are issued. In the meantime, it is evening time across the pond now, so we'll let you get some dinner. And thank you so much for taking a little bit of time to speak with us, and we'll have you on the air very shortly with your new disc on the Laurel label, Maestra. Samantha, take care and hope to see you in Virginia one of these days.
Thank you so much.